In today's video, we are going to be talking all about packaging. I'm going to be showing you all how to make this beautiful drawstring bag that is very versatile and can serve as a packaging material for whatever item that you're making for your business. This item is not limited to people who own businesses. If you want to make a particular gift item for your friend or your loved one, this drawstring bag can come in handy for you. It all depends on you and whatever you choose to use your drawstring bag for. So if you'll be interested in learning how to make this drawstring bag in very easy steps for yourself or for your business, please be sure to watch this video to the end. Also, please, as usual, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also, like this video if you enjoyed watching, which I'm sure you would, and also feel free to share with any of your friends that would love something like this. Alright guys, now that all that is said and done, let's get straight into today's video. Alright guys, so for the purpose of this video, you'll need your preferred fabric of choice. For me, I'm working with my satin fabric, and what I have here is my satin fabric pinned together. I just finished cutting the dimension I wanted, and the dimension, just in case you're curious, is 20 inches by 15 inches. Alright guys, so please note that the dimension I gave you is with my fabric on fold, so the actual length is 40 inches by 15 inches, but by the time I folded my fabric, it gave me 20 inches by 15 inches. I just wanted to point that out for you all before we go ahead in this tutorial. Feel free to customize yours to whatever dimension you would like, depending on the size of the drawstring bag they are planning to make for yourself. So what I'm going to start off doing is I'm going to run some zigzag stitches along the sides of my fabric because satin tends to fray and I don't want to have to deal with that. So I already went ahead to do that, and my fabric is already stitched at the edge. So what I'm going to start off by doing now is work on the first piece of fabric. Okay, we have two different pieces of fabric, the same dimension. For me, 20 inches by 15 inches. So what I'm going to start off by doing is I'm going to measure 2 inches from the top of my fabric, okay, and then I'm also going to mark 3 inches. So yeah, let's go ahead to do that now on the fabric. Alright guys, now that I'm marking that, what this space is going to serve as is the space for us to pass the string or whatever piece of fabric that we are going to use to get our drawstring result at the end of the day. Remember, we are making a drawstring bag and we need the string to draw on, right? So this casing that I'm kind of creating right here is where we are going to insert whatever string we plan to use. And because I just like precision and everything, I'm going to be marking this part that I already marked on the fabric so that when I'm sewing, I don't get carried away and then probably sew over this part that I just marked out. So next thing I'm going to do now is mark my sewing allowance at the sides of the fabric. For me, I'm working with half of an inch. Feel free to do yours, maybe quarter of an inch, 3/4 of an inch, but yeah, generally I like to just stick to half of an inch for my sewing allowance. So now that that is done, you go ahead to sew on that sewing allowance you just marked and then skip the drawstring casing that we just marked out. So before I go to my sewing machine, I'm going to work on my second piece of fabric, and all this one entails is just marking your sewing allowance. But then because we need to turn the fabric inside out before finishing up with our drawstring bag, I like to just leave a space of about 2 to 3 inches by the side for turning my fabric inside out. So that's where I just marked. So for me, I marked about 8 inches downward from the top of my fabric and then marked 11 inches again. So we have a total of about 3 inches space for turning the fabric inside out. Feel free to make yours larger or smaller. It all depends on you and your preference. So what I'm doing here, just in case you're wondering, is I'm marking my sewing allowance. I'm working with half of an inch sewing allowance for the purpose of this my drawstring bag. Alright guys, so what we are going to do now is just go ahead to sew on that sewing allowance, and remember the 3 inches space that we left earlier on. We're going to skip that part and then sew everywhere else. Alright guys, so the next thing I'm going to do now once I'm done is go straight to my sewing machine. Remember not to close that 3-inch space because you'll have to loosen it in order to turn your fabric inside out. So now that I'm done sewing all that, see the spaces that I left, the 1-inch space for my drawstring casing and the 3 inches space for turning my fabric inside out. The next stage in this particular tutorial is we're going to work on matching the two pieces of fabric together. All this one that I'm doing here is just me being extra, just burning off straight pieces of fabric. Feel free to do that or skip that step for the purpose of your own work. So yeah, what I was saying, we are going to go ahead to now press open the sides of this our fabric that we already worked on. And this is just to allow us be able to match the two fabrics together easily, just to make the sewing allowance very defined, right? And then you'll be able to match the fabric together properly. So I'm going to go to my ironing board now and then quickly press open that space. But because I'm working with half of an inch sewing allowance, yeah, opening up that space might be a bit difficult, but the point is you want to make sure you match your fabric together to make everything come out really, really neat, especially if you're working for a client. Okay, if someone brings this kind of contract to you to make drawstring bags for their business, make sure you're doing something quality for the person. Okay, so remember when we spoke about the business aspect of, you know, creating pieces and being a creative, you want to render quality service in order to have your clients coming back to you. Okay, so please try as much as possible to make your work very, very neat and make it look professional. So yeah, now that that is said and done, remember you match the sewing allowances of the two pieces of fabric together, and then you go ahead to pin them together, because we want this drawstring bag to be kind of, you know, reversible. So if you turn it inside out or whatever, you still have your proper satin finish on the drawstring bag. Okay, remember we are working with satin here, and satin has a dull side and a glossy side. You want your drawstring bag to be such that either way, whichever way you turn your fabric, you still have the glossy side showing, you know, outside your drawstring bag. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. So what I'm doing now is just matching the mouth, okay, for lack of a better description, the mouth of my drawstring bag. I'm matching it together, and then I'm going to sew it together on half of an inch. Feel free to sew yours on 3/4 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. All right, guys, so now that I'm done, this is what my matched mouth of my fabric looks like. The next stage is for us to turn this drawstring bag inside out. And remember the 3 inches space we left earlier on? Exactly. That's where we are going to be turning our bag inside out from. I decided to just speed up this part of the tutorial so I don't bore you guys with, you know, struggling with my fabric to turn it inside out. So that's why it looks like my hands are moving really, really quickly. Alright guys, so now that I've successfully turned my fabric inside out, the next thing I'm going to do is make sure that everything comes out totally, okay? You don't want any parts of your bag hiding inside, okay? So the next thing you're going to do now is close up that 3-inch space that you left earlier on, okay? You don't want that part to be open. So you're going to now, you know, bring it out, right? And then just go ahead to sew on 1/8 of an inch just to close up that part. And this is what we have here. I also went ahead to my ironing board to just press my drawstring bag just to give it a very nice, you know, neat finish. I just like seeing my work looking neat even before I'm done with the project. So the next thing you're going to do now is tuck in that part, okay? The part that there's no opening in is the part that is going to serve as the inner part of your drawstring bag, okay? And then the part with the 1-inch space for the drawstring casing, that's the part that is going to be the outer part of your drawstring bag. So what I'm doing here is just tucking the inner part in, and then now that I have this my open space, I'm now going to sew a proper casing. And all that entails is I'm going to mark about 1/4 of an inch from the top of my drawstring bag, right? Mark it, and then I'm going to now mark about 1 inch downwards after marking that point. In case you're confused about what I'm saying, just watch what I'm doing so you get a grip of what I'm trying to explain to you guys. Okay guys, so can you see now that that space that I created is where we are now going to now sew on to create a casing for this particular bag. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. Anyway, by the time you're done making the bag, I'm sure everything I'm explaining now will make total sense to you. Feel free to rewind and watch again just in case you didn't understand everything I did the first time. Alright guys, so now that I've marked my 2 lines, I'm now going to sew on those lines, and this is what we have here. I already went ahead to mark to also make my string. Feel free to use a piece of satin if you like, but because I didn't have a matching satin with me at home, satin, what they call this now, ribbon at home, I decided to make my own drawstring, and all that entails is just using a tiny piece of fabric and piping it to form a drawstring. The preference all depends on you and your choice, okay? There's no hard and fast rule in this game. If you feel like using a satin ribbon ribbon is going to be faster for you, please feel free to use your satin ribbon and don't bother with making your own drawstring. So what I'm doing now is I'm using my safety pin to just pass this my drawstring through that casing that we already worked on, and voila guys, that is it for this particular tutorial. Making a drawstring bag is so easy, and if you're a business oriented person like me and you're just looking for something to do, this is something you can be making for business owners, okay, especially people who sell hair, okay, they always need these bags. And even people that, you know, are into other types of services, drawstring bags are something that people always look for people to, you know, just contract this kind of job to. So feel free to let people know that you make drawstring bags and you'll make your cool cash from making this item for people. All right guys, this is just me illustrating what, you know, this kind of a bag can serve you for. If you enjoyed watching, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. Also, if you made it up to this point in this my tutorial and you're yet to be subscribed to my channel, please help my business, okay? This my channel is also part of my businesses, okay? So please support me by subscribing to my channel. Also share this with your friends. And yeah guys, I can't wait to see you in another tutorial really soon. Love you guys so much. Bye. Mwah.